We have a nice morning here to work with at any rate. This is the inlet where Harrison Creek runs into Catamount Lake up here near Steamboat Springs. And this has been a spot that has produced some really nice fish in the past. This is not a lake I'm particularly familiar with, but I know that one of the fellows we have with us took a 13.5-pound rainbow trout just off a point right out here just 2 weeks ago. And fishing's been a little bit slow the last couple of days, but this still is a good place to look for a lunker trout. So I'm going to take a float tube out and see what I can do out there. Well, this looks like a good place to put in. There's a beaver working upstream. Hey, got a little ice on the water here, just a little skim right at the edge. Have to break that before I go out and see what that bottom is like. That water ought to be cold enough, I think, but with these neoprene waders and a pair of long johns under them, I think I'll be plenty warm enough. This won't be the first time I've broken a little ice to get in the lake. Getting in one of these things, you're about as graceful as a duck on land. But like a duck, once you get out there, you're usually in pretty good shape. Float tubing is becoming increasingly popular. It's a good way for one person to get out and stalk around in ponds and lakes and find fish. We have found that with the big flippers that we use, that the easiest and best way to get into the water is to walk in backwards, which can present its own hazards, especially where you don't know the bottom, like I don't know the bottom here. But hopefully if there's a sudden drop-off, I'll float. I'm going to start off with a leech pattern. That's a favorite of big trout. I'm going to be somewhat dependent on Warren Wood and Al Patine, who are coming in on a boat, and they're going to hopefully give me a little better information about where and how to get these fish. So like I say, it's been a little bit slow the last day or two. They had a big blow on the lake. Right now I'm using a high density sinking line, or high density sink tip line. The first 10 feet is a high density line and the rest is a floating line for ease in casting. And this is a line that should get my fly down 4 or 5 feet, something like that, depending on how fast I work it. And since the other guys are fishing on the bottom, I thought maybe I'd try the middle water and see whether or not I could do any good. And so far I'm not, but that doesn't mean that I won't. The water's a little off color, so I changed to something that was black and a little bit larger than I'd normally use. So I'm using a rabbit skin leech. It's not weighted, but it's a fairly good sized one that's maybe 1.5 inches long. And I'm just stripping it slowly and working close to the bank, hoping that one of those big fish that lives in here is going to see that at some point. Now the guys out in the boat, what they're doing is that they're using basically the same kinds of patterns, but different kind of leech patterns and whatnot, but they're working on the bottom, right on the bottom, with a spinning rod and some small split shots, just enough to get them on the bottom so that they can bounce them along. And they've had, now both of them are pretty experienced at fishing this lake, and they've had pretty good luck in this area doing that in the past. Well, one of the unique things about this lake is it's one of the few places, especially at these lower altitudes, though this isn't all that low, probably 8,000 feet here at least, that goldens occur. Now they have stocked goldens in this particular reservoir, but the true golden exists in just a very few high mountain lakes. I know that there's some in the Wind River Range up in Wyoming, and there's places in, I believe, in the Bob Marshall Wilderness in Montana that have some goldens, but few fishers have ever been privileged to catch the true golden trout. at the same time, the hybrid that has been stocked in this lake I think is a pretty good fish and is a pretty hardy fish. I saw a few up in the river. Warren Wood took me up there earlier on and we saw a whole bunch of them kind of stacked up there, and so for sure these fish are hanging around this inlet, and I think the chances that we're going to run into a few might be pretty good. This lake is what I would term one of the sagebrush lakes that occur all up and down the Rocky Mountains and on both sides of the Rockies out into the prairies and high plains, and they are basically small man-made impoundments. Characteristically, they're not very deep, but one thing they have in common is that they grow trout extremely well. Some of the trout in these lakes will grow as much as 7 inches a year, which is fairly phenomenal growth. But the lakes tend to be somewhat alkaline, and so they grow good insect life, which is good for the trout, obviously. And it's not unusual to catch extremely large trout in some of these impoundments. And like I say, there are literally thousands of these up and down the Rocky Mountain chain and out into the high plains. They fish very well. They're not particularly deep. In fact, 15 to 20 feet is probably an average for most of them, and a lot of the water isn't even that deep. You cut the crap out of me. It's got teeth. Well, tell me a little bit about this rig you're using. I tend to use the long rod, the fly rod, but I know that you're pretty expert at using a fly and bubble on a spinning rig. And in fact, in this lake right here, 2 weeks ago, got a 13.5-pound rainbow on that.
Yeah, I did.
Sort of a rig.
In fact, I was using this rig that I have right now. It's about a 6.5-foot spinning outfit. I wasn't using a bubble at that time. I was using the leech fly with just a little bit of weight at the end to get a little bit of distance, and right on the bottom. But most often I use about a 5-foot rod because it's a lot more limber and you can handle it a little better. And the fish, you don't have to have a really big fish on there to have a lot of fun with it.
Well, how much leader do you like to use with your rig?
Well, I think typically everybody that'll say that you should have 1.5 times the length of your rod as a leader. And that is a good gauge, works out all the time. If your leader is just a little bit too short, it's amazing that the fish won't hit. If it's too long, then you have trouble getting the fish in because there's just too much play on the fish.
Well, you use the same rig in the rivers, don't you?
Oh, exactly. If you're floating or you're fishing, just walking down the river, wading the river the same as any other fly fisher person would be. We do the same thing, turn over the rocks, try to find out what the insects are that they may be feeding on that day. If they're using dry flies, we try to find out what hatch might be on the water, and then we use that fly. Now the reason, and the older reason that we use a bubble at that time is just to get the fly out there. We don't have the ability with this spinning gear to throw the fly out there like a fly fisher person. So we just use an empty bubble, and that's strictly to get the fly where we want it.
Just for weight.
Just for weight to get it out there.
And then it keeps it on the surface.
And so we've got to know what the hatch is, what they're taking, whether they're on the top or the bottom. So there's absolutely no difference fishing a spinning gear or fishing a fly rod. It's just fishing with a fly rod just takes more skill. That's all there is to it. I mean, you really have to practice a lot, where beginners can be very successful with a spinning outfit.
I can see fish working up and down this inlet here where the Yampa runs into Catamount Lake, and like I say, fish are rolling. Didn't take long to get one to cooperate. I want to try to keep back away from the bank as much as I can, just so that the fish don't see me down there, because it's really bright right here. And I'm thinking if I can float a fly in on those fish that are working down there without them seeing me, I should be able to tease one into hitting my fly. Oh, he was after it. I saw that fish come up and he was following that fly, but he didn't take it. I may have to change patterns here to get one of those fish to take. Well, we've tried to show you 3 different ways to approach these sagebrush or prairie lakes that are out here. One is with a spinning rod and using what is in essence a jig and a fly, if you would, or a fly jig, or whatever you want to term it. The other one is using a fly in a bubble, and I was using a fly rod and various fly lines to fish at different depths in the lake. And I think that this is something that probably is almost universal to these prairie lakes, which are not very deep, but which hold some just enormous fish. And even though we maybe can't show you some of the huge fish that exist in these impoundments, it's up to you to go out there and find out for yourself, because it's sure worth the effort.